Chapter 83. Flash of Inspiration. Immediately thereafter, the giant golden ape opened its mouth to release a burst of azure light, which vanished into the ball of black and blue light in a flash. A burst of spiritual light appeared on the surface of the ball of light, and countless black and blue runes of different sizes emerged before rapidly revolving around it. All of a sudden, countless threads of black and blue light erupted out of the ball of light before flying through the air in all directions, instantly intertwining to form a black and blue net that encompassed an area with a radius of several kilometers. This was an ability that Han Li had developed by chance, by combining his bright sight spirit eyes and law destruction eye. However, using the ability would instantly exhaust the entirety of his current supply of magic power. As soon as the giant black and blue net took shape, a certain section of it instantly shuddered before warping slightly as if it had come into contact with something. The giant golden ape instantly sped toward that spot on the net like lightning, leaving the azure wind dragon behind. The azure wind dragon let loose an enraged roar before immediately setting off in hot pursuit. The golden ape sped through the air like a gust of wind, appearing at the irregular spot on the giant net in the blink of an eye. Before the azure wind dragon had a chance to catch up to it, it reached out with a dazzling golden hand before slamming it viciously through the air. A resounding boom rang out alongside violent fluctuations, and a vast expanse of black runes emerged before crumbling away in unison. Immediately thereafter, the centaur-like creature stumbled out of thin air with a horrified look on its remaining head. Before it had a chance to react, the giant golden ape's other fist was already crashing down with devastating force. The centaur-like creature's movements were still extremely sluggish, and it hurriedly crossed its arms in an attempt to protect its own head. Right at this moment, the giant ape let loose a cold harumph, and the centaur-like creature instantly felt as if a sharp spike had been driven straight into its brain, causing it to let loose an agonized howl while its entire body completely stiffened. The golden fist instantly passed through the gap between the centaur-like creature's arms before striking its only remaining head. The creature's final head instantly exploded like a watermelon, and its enormous body spasmed for a moment before plummeting toward the ground. At this point, the azure wind dragon had caught up to the giant golden ape, and it was just about to drive its horn into the ape's heart from behind. But its body suddenly crumbled away as it let loose an anguished howl. Immediately thereafter, an azure shadow shot out of the centaur-like creature's headless body. An intrigued look appeared in the giant golden ape's eyes upon seeing this. The azure shadow was none other than a miniature three-headed centaur-like creature that was enveloped within a gust of azure whirlwind. It appeared to have already attained a substantial form, much like a cultivator's nascent soul. Black light flashed from one of the miniature centaur-like creature's heads, and the same black light appeared all over its body as it quickly vanished into thin air, leaving only a trail of after-images in its wake. The giant golden ape let loose a low roar, and black light flashed from its glabella as its law destruction eye emerged, then released a thin thread of black light that disappeared in a flash. The space over 1,000 feet away then shuddered as the miniature centaur-like creature stumbled out into the open with an alarmed expression on all three of its faces. All of a sudden, silver light flashed around it, and a series of crisscrossing silver chains of fire appeared, instantly forming a massive net of silver flames that converged toward the center. Azure light flashed from the miniature centaur-like creature's left-sided head. The azure whirlwind revolving around its body transformed into an azure pillar of wind that enveloped its body from all sides, preventing the silver net of fire from closing around it. However, during this brief moment, the giant golden ape had already arrived on the scene, and a string of cracks and pops rang out as the muscles on its arms bulged before it threw a ferocious punch at the pillar of azure wind. In the face of the almighty punch, the azure pillar of wind was instantly destroyed, and the miniature centaur-like creature inside let loose a blood-curdling howl before exploding like a shattered egg. At this moment, Most of the giant golden ape's body had already been stained red by its own blood, but it paid no heed to its own injuries, as it turned around without pause to charge toward the one-eyed giant that had fallen onto the ground not far away. The one-eyed giant had sustained extremely severe injuries, having had its heart pierced through by the centaur-like creature's lightning halberd, but it possessed extremely impressive life force and was still able to ward off the cold embrace of death. At this moment, the hole on its chest had been filled by a layer of fine yellow sand once again, but its aura was still extremely feeble, and it seemed to be barely capable of any movement. An alarmed and horrified look appeared on its face at the sight of the approaching golden ape, and it let loose a loud roar, upon which the yellow sand around it quickly took on the shape of a massive boat, which began to carry its body away into the distance. At the same time, its eye began to glow with white light again. A beam of white light shot out of the eye before hurtling directly toward the giant golden ape, and a grim look appeared in the golden ape's eyes upon seeing this. It didn't know what type of attack this white light was, but thinking back to what had happened to the centaur-like creature after it had been struck by the same attack, it knew that this was definitely not something to be treated lightly. With that in mind, golden light flashed from its body, and it quickly shrank back down into its human form. Right at this moment, white light flashed within the giant's eye, and the beam of white light changed directions as if it were a living creature, aiming itself downward and continuing to hurtle toward Han Li at an incredible speed. Han Li was greatly alarmed to see this, and he wanted to take evasive measures, but it was already too late. In the instant before the beam of light was about to reach him, he was struck by a flash of inspiration, and he pulled off the heaven-controlling vial from around his neck before tossing it toward the oncoming beam of white light. In the instant that the beam of white light came into contact with the heaven-controlling vial, it instantly vanished into the vial, while the vial itself displayed no reaction whatsoever. Han Li's mouth gaped open slightly in surprise upon seeing this, following which an elated look appeared on his face, and he withdrew the vial with a wave of his hand, then immediately continued in his pursuit of the one-eyed giant. The giant's eye had sprung wide open upon seeing this, and it was completely unable to believe what it had just witnessed. However, it then immediately returned to its senses and drew upon all of its remaining magic power before injecting it into the boat beneath it, causing it to glow brightly with yellow light, while also accelerating drastically. Meanwhile, Han Li adopted his giant mountain ape form once again before opening his mouth and letting loose a resounding roar. A burst of white shockwaves instantly surged forth in a frenzy, quickly encompassing an area in a radius of several thousand feet, causing the space in its wake to warp and twist appreciably. Given the one-eyed giant's remarkable physical resistance, the sound waves were naturally unable to inflict much damage onto it from so far away, but the sand boat beneath it wasn't all that resolute to begin with, and it was instantly shattered. As a result, the one-eyed giant was immediately sent tumbling out of the sky. Right at this moment, golden light flashed beneath it as the giant golden ape instantly arrived on the scene, then slammed its fist viciously into the giant's head. The giant's head instantly exploded, sending a vast expanse of red and white liquid splattering through the air. A ball of dim yellow light flew out of its body, and it was none other than the one-eyed giant's nascent soul. However, as soon as it emerged, it was instantly caught within a silver net of fire that converged from all directions to trap it within. Countless silver runes then flew out of the fiery net before adhering themselves tightly to the nascent soul's body, instantly forming a silver seal that completely immobilized it in mid-air. All of this had taken place in the blink of an eye, and the one-eyed giant's nascent soul didn't get a chance to do anything before it was captured. It had failed to anticipate that Han Li had learned from his previous experience with the centaur-like creature's nascent soul, leading him to release the Essence Fire Raven in advance for an instant capture. The giant's body crashed heavily down onto the ground, and all of the spirit patterns all over the body dimmed, following which it began to crumble away, chuckily disintegrating into countless grains of translucent yellow sand. However, its murky grey eye remained, and it rolled down onto the ground. Not far away, Hanli reverted back to his human form before drifting down onto the ground. At this moment, he was inspecting the small green vial in his hand, seemingly contemplating something. He then raised his head before making a beckoning motion with his hand, releasing a burst of suction force that drew the giant's grey eye into his grasp. At the moment, the eyeball appeared to be no different from an ordinary stone bead that was completely devoid of any aura. However, the fact that it was able to release beams of light that were imbued with the power of the law of time clearly indicated that it was no ordinary object. For some reason, Hanli was struck by the urge to touch the heaven-controlling vial to the eye, but doing so resulted in no change at all to either the eye or the heaven-controlling vial. Hanli wasn't overly disappointed by this, and he didn't think much of it, as he placed the small green vial around his neck again. He then summoned a green jade box before carefully storing the eye into it. At this point, the silver flame that had trapped the giant's nascent soul had already reverted back into its fire-raven form, and it flew back to Hanli's side. Hanli cast his gaze toward the one-eyed giant's nascent soul, and a contemplative look appeared on his face. He didn't know exactly what uses there were for nascent souls of creatures comparable to true immortals, but he was certain that even in the immortal realm, these things had to be extremely precious. However, he had no time to ponder this matter at the moment. With a sweep of his sleeve, he adhered several talismans to the giant's nascent soul, then withdrew his essence fire raven and stored the nascent soul into a wooden box before stowing it away. He then made his way over to the body of the centaur-like creature several thousand feet away, then also tossed it into a storage bracelet. Only after doing all of that did he allow himself a moment to catch his breath. That battle had truly been an exhausting one, but thankfully, he had sustained only minor external injuries. He looked around to find that the small island had already been severely damaged during the course of the battle, with countless ancient trees felled, and a vast volume of debris littering the ravaged ground. Only some places that were further away and weren't affected by the battle were able to maintain their original state. Hanli closed his eyes and released his spiritual sense, which instantly encompassed the entirety of this landmass. Moments later, he raised an eyebrow, as a hint of surprise appeared on his face. After a brief moment of contemplation, he flew toward a certain direction deep into the dense forest.